Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into something we all deal with literally every single day: decoding human behavior. Have you ever wished you could just, know what someone was really thinking without needing some psychic superpower? Well, psychologists have found that people are actually constantly revealing their thoughts, just not with their words. So today, we're going to learn how to read the unspoken by looking really closely at how our bodies communicate. Let's get into it.
I want you to think back for a second. Have you ever walked away from a conversation and just suddenly realized what someone actually meant, even though they didn't say it out loud? You just had this gut feeling that their words completely contradicted their true intentions. Well, you definitely aren't imagining things. That instinct, it comes from tiny subconscious signals you were picking up on without even realizing it.
And this really highlights the core of human interaction. On one side, we have what people say, that polished, perfectly controlled social mask we all wear. But on the other side, we have what their body reveals. The fascinating truth here is that while we're carefully choosing our words, our bodies are just constantly broadcasting our true emotional state. The real secret to reading people isn't in parsing their vocabulary, it's in watching that broadcast.
All right, Section 1, the single clue myth. We need to look for patterns.
So, Hollywood loves to tell us that a crossed arm means someone is instantly defensive, or that looking to the left means they're lying. That is a total myth. If you only look for one isolated clue, you're going to misread the situation every single time. Instead of looking at static clues, you really need to look at sequences and first reactions. Imagine you just got a big promotion and you run to tell a coworker. They say, "Congratulations." But right before that big smile appears, you catch a split-second expression of disappointment. That tiny fraction of a second reveals more than the 10 minutes of congratulations that follow. Why? Because the brain reacts instantly to the news way before the conscious mind has time to pull up that polite social mask. Similarly, experts don't just sit there watching static behavior. They look for sudden shifts. Say you're talking with someone who's been totally relaxed all evening. Then, suddenly, you bring up a specific project at work, and they instantly become tense. Their posture stiffens, their jaw clenches. That change is incredibly valuable information. It tells you that specific topic just triggered an emotion. The change itself matters significantly more than the behavior alone.
Moving on to Section 2, spotting emotional leakage. This is when emotions escape.
This right here is what happens when the body actively betrays the mind, even when a person is trying desperately to hide how they feel. Emotional leakage occurs when true emotions unconsciously escape through physical behavior, completely bypassing a person's best efforts to conceal them. We all try to hide our emotions all the time, but emotions require energy, and that energy has to go somewhere. The problem for the person trying to hide it is that the body often continues telling the truth long after the words start covering it up.
Think about the stark contrast between what is spoken and what actually leaks out. It's like a visual irony. Someone might look you dead in the eye and say, "I'm totally calm," while gripping their coffee cup so tightly that their knuckles are turning white. Or maybe someone insists, "I'm fine, really," but their foot is tapping against the floor at 100 miles an hour. The verbal claim might be peace, but the physical leak is pure panic or anxiety.
Oh, and speaking of the lower body, here's a massive tip for you. Follow their feet. Most of us spend all our time staring right at a person's face, but our faces are trained to be polite. Feet, on the other hand, are surprisingly honest. If someone is genuinely enjoying a conversation, their feet will usually point right at you. But if their face is smiling while their feet are angled directly toward the nearest exit, their mind has already checked out and they're literally planning their escape route.
But hey, leakage isn't just physical movement, it's also about time. Timing is a massive source of information. Imagine you ask a really simple question, something like, "Did you enjoy the meeting?" A quick response usually means they're just speaking their existing thoughts. But if there's a long, heavy delay before they answer a simple question, that pause is a leak. It indicates their brain is actively filtering the truth, navigating some kind of uncertainty, or very carefully choosing the safest wording possible.
Which brings us to Section 3, the power of clusters, stacking the clues.
Okay, so we know how to spot individual leaks, but remember that single clue myth we talked about earlier? One leak means absolutely nothing until they begin to stack up. Professionals rely heavily on what's called the cluster rule. This is the practice of looking for 3 to 5 behavioral signals that all point in the exact same emotional direction to establish a reliable pattern. Honestly, if you take away only one thing from this explainer, let it be this. True confidence in reading human behavior doesn't come from a single magical clue. It comes from spotting patterns.
Let's imagine how this builds in a real-time interaction. You're talking to someone, and you notice clue 1, a forced smile. The eyes aren't crinkling, it's just the mouth moving.
On its own, maybe they're just tired. It's interesting for sure, but it's not proof of anything. So you don't jump to conclusions, you just observe. Then you ask them a quick question about a project, and you notice clue 2, a slight pause before they answer. Now the evidence is beginning to stack up, a forced smile plus a filtered, delayed answer. We're starting to see a trend here, but we still need more data. And then you look down and see clue 3, their feet are pointed completely away from you, aiming right for the door. Now you have a cluster, a forced smile, a delayed response, and feet trying to escape. All 3 clues are pointing in the exact same direction, discomfort and a desire to disengage. Together, they create an undeniable pattern.
So, just to summarize this, because it's absolutely crucial, 1 clue is merely interesting. It's just a hypothesis. But 3 to 5 clues, that gives you a reliable pattern. When you wait for a cluster, you stop jumping to wild conclusions over a single nervous laugh or a crossed arm, and you start making highly accurate assessments based on solid, stacked evidence.
All right, Section 4, Identifying Hidden Motives. Let's understand the why.
Once you can spot these clusters reliably, you can actually start uncovering hidden motives. This is the part where we move from figuring out what someone is thinking to uncovering the deeper reason why they're acting that way in the first place. Most people are completely obsessed with the question, what is this person thinking? But thoughts are fleeting, right? They change by the second. The much better, far more revealing question to ask yourself is, what does this person want right now? When you stop guessing fleeting thoughts and start analyzing their fundamental drives, human behavior becomes remarkably clear. Consider these common core motives: approval, attention, safety, status, connection. While a person's thoughts might bounce around frantically, their underlying motive is highly stable. If you realize a coworker's primary motive in a meeting is status, suddenly their tendency to interrupt or take credit makes perfect sense. Once you understand the engine driving the behavior, predicting what they'll do next becomes incredibly easy.
And a really great way to figure out those motives is by listening for missing information, paying close attention to what a person chooses to focus on. Imagine you ask 2 people about their vacation. One excitedly shares the experiences, the amazing sights, the food. Their motive might simply be connection and sharing joy. But the other person spends 5 straight minutes complaining about the hotel prices and the airport delays. Why? Because people naturally focus on what matters most to them. The details they choose to highlight and the details they leave out reveal exactly where their emotions and underlying motives are truly directed.
Finally, Section 5, Becoming a Master Observer. Time to put it all into practice.
Okay, we've covered first reactions, emotional leakage, the critical importance of clusters, and digging down to hidden motives. Now, as you take this out into the real world, please remember this distinction. We are not psychics. We are not flawless human lie detectors trying to catch people out. That is a trap. What we are careful observers noticing patterns. Our goal is simply to pay attention, to notice the sudden changes in a baseline behavior, to note the timing of a pause, and to wait patiently for a cluster of 3 to 5 clues before we make an assumption.
And I'll leave you with this final thought. Once you start paying attention to the unspoken, the feet angling away, those split-second micro-expressions, the emotional leakage masking itself behind polite words, you realize that people are revealing far more than they ever intend to. So I challenge you in your very next interaction to look past the words and observe the patterns. Because once you know what to look for, the truth is always hiding right there in plain sight. So the next time someone tells you I'm perfectly fine...
Welcome back.